Hello, everyone. It's 6:15, and we'll go ahead and get started. We'll probably get some more people coming through. I appreciate everybody coming tonight to listen to Bryan and see what he has to say. We can get things started off with a prayer. Julian Berger is offered to give our prayer. Please, Julian. Thank you.
I'd love to thank you, Doug.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are very grateful to be here tonight as concerned citizens who are grateful for this land of liberty and to know that our liberties and rights come from Thee. We're grateful for the wise men whom Thou didst raise up to write and codify all those rights and freedoms in our Constitution, not only the U.S. Constitution, but our Idaho Constitution as well. We specifically pray this night for Thee to accept our gratitude for this great facility to come and listen to one of the candidates for Congress. This fine man, we pray that Thou bless us with wisdom and with an enlightened mind, that we will be able to judge the things he says according to the principles that which we know are true, that preserve freedom and liberty. We pray for us as we meet this night, that we'll be guided by Thy Spirit and forward as we go into election and campaigns in our elections. We pray to thank Thee for Doug and Cindy Toomer for organizing Stand Up for Idaho, and ask Thee to bless them and bless our speaker, Bryan Smith, tonight, that he will tell us the words in words that we can hear and understand. This we pray for humbly in the name of Thy Son, even Jesus the Christ. Amen.
Thanks, Julian. Could everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Just a couple of things to let everybody know. We actually end up with a pretty good crowd, even, at these events of ours now. And a lot of people, a lot of our friends have lost their jobs, and because of the mandates, they've made decisions that they were not going to take the tyranny that was occurring. And so part of that, what we're doing is from now on, we're going to have tables out here that to let some of these folks that have they're trying to do things on the side or started businesses and stuff. We're going to let them go ahead and do things out there. And we're also going to try to encourage employers that may have a need for employees to come and talk to people here so that we can try and find jobs for these people. They made quite a sacrifice. And a lot of us are fortunate enough that we did not have to make that decision. Me, for one, I'm retired and stuff, but I would hate to be in the position that some of these people were put in, and so I appreciate that. And that's what these tables are for out there. And so if you can support them, that would be really great. Christmas is coming up. Maybe there's a good gift out there that you could get for somebody. It was brought to my attention today is sort of a special day. I didn't know whether you know this. I didn't know it. December 15th, 1791. Do we know what happened that date? The Bill of Rights was ratified 230 years ago today. So that's a special event. And, right now, our rights are under attack. And we have to pay attention to that. So I'm glad that this was brought to my attention. Unfortunately, I haven't paid attention enough over the past, but I'm starting to now, and I'm glad that everybody else is too. So anyway, happy anniversary to our Bill of Rights. Definitely. Another couple of things going on. Tim Barton, he's president of Wall Builders. I don't know if people know who the Wall Builders are, but it's a pretty good organization. And he's actually going to be here the 8th of January. And it's a Saturday evening. and at 7 o'clock, and he's going to be here, and we'd like to fill this whole place, not just this room, but out through there. And so if everybody could advertise and tell he's coming, you know, Stand Up for Idaho and Western Springs Cowboy Church is sponsoring him basically to bring him in. Actually, that should be the other way around. The Cowboy Church is doing it, bringing him in and all that, and Scotty came up and says, well, let's try to have a big event for him on Saturday too, so that's what we're working on. Yes?
Is Tim Barton the son of David Barton?
Yes, Tim is the son of David, and he's the president of Wall Builders, so it ought to be a very, very good night. And one last thing before we get to Bryan. Tomorrow night, Ammon Bundy's coming back. He called me and wanted to come back, and so he's coming tomorrow. He'll be here in this same room, but we'll start at 7 o'clock tomorrow. Come and listen to Ammon. He has an interesting story to tell and all that, so we need to give everybody an opportunity there. It is coming Christmas time, so we're hopefully, you know, just going to have our Wednesday meetings for the next little while, and they may actually get a little smaller and smaller because I'm getting tired and Christmas is close. So anyway, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bryan, and Bryan Smith is candidate for Congress and our 2nd district, and I'm not going to tell anybody what he wants to do. I'm going to let him do that. So Bryan, come on up. Everybody give him a big hand, please.
Thank you. Let me turn this projector on. Hopefully it came on. There we go. I would have turned it on earlier, but I'm running out of battery power. Well, it just keeps shutting off on me, so I may.
Your battery's dead on your projector.
I don't think so. It's got four little dots. Oh, then it goes down to 0. If it shuts off again, I'll give up.
Yeah, there we go.
Ah, we got it? Okay, let me see if this works. This button. Okay. Okay, can everybody see this picture?
Yep.
All right, my name is Bryan Smith, and I'm from, since 1994, I'm from Idaho Falls. I actually graduated in from Nampa High School in 1980. I grew up over on the other side of the state. I left for a time for a couple years and came back and went to school. Ended up getting trained as a lawyer. That's what I went to school for. I came back in 1994 and I practiced law in Idaho Falls since then. I want to show you this picture. People tell me as I go out and meet with groups, they say, you know, Bryan, you just don't tell enough about yourself. Because I want to talk about issues and things, and so next thing I know, I'm talking about issues and things. They say, you got to talk about yourself more. Well, who knows Priscilla Giddings? Raise your hand if you've seen her. She goes around and speaks. She is a fighter pilot. Everybody know that? And she's got this great prop. It's like it's like a cannon shell, and she takes it around, and I said, you know, I got to come up with something so I have a prop. I had to reach into the Smith family bag of tricks to come up with something, and I came up with this picture, okay? Now, the reason I'm going to show you this picture is, look at these guys, okay? These guys look like the Duck Dynasty guys, right? But let me tell you who these guys are. This guy on the left, his name is Dennis. Now, you notice Dennis's pants, how nice and clean they are? Right next to him is his brother, Tom. Look, see how he's got a rip in his pants, his hands are dirty? That's because Dennis was a really good card player, and he would win enough money on Saturday night in Caldwell, Idaho, that he'd pay his brother to do his chores the rest of the week. This guy on the far right, his name's Dave. Now, these guys are my great uncles. and they settled Canyon County in 1864. They had another brother named Hyrcanius, and Hyrcanius is my great-great-great-grandfather. Now, if you take a look at this picture, this was taken in about 1920. These guys all lived to their early 90s, late 80s, and they were gold miners. They never got married. Just look at these guys. Do you think these guys needed Obamacare? I don't think they did at all. Let me show you a picture just to show you these guys, how colorful these guys are. Take a look at see the guy in the middle? That's when he's about 89 or 88 in that picture. Let me show you a picture when he was in his 30s. There he is right there. That's Thomas Johnson. There's a picture of him, okay? The reason I show this is that, we can turn the lights back up again, is that no matter what anybody says about me, there will be all kinds of things said. Nobody can accuse me of being a carpetbagger, okay? My family settled Canyon County in 1864, and we've been here ever since. So, like I mentioned, I now currently live in Idaho Falls. Here's my wife and one of my children. I've got 5 of them and her husband. Got 5 kids. They all went to school here. And who was here? Who moved into the state after 2014? Raise your hand if you moved here after 2014. This is common wherever I go. There's a few people. They weren't here in 2014. How many of you remember that I ran for Congress in 2014? Okay? Anybody not remember that? Got a few people because you weren't here, right? All right. I ran for Congress in 2014, and the reason I did is because back in 2014, Mike Simpson was a terrible congressional representative for conservative Republicans in Idaho. You believe that, Jolene?
Yes.
He was bad. You heard of the program Cash for Clunkers? Remember that? He supported that. Remember the bank bailouts? Oh yeah, it was so long ago. He did bank bailouts. Well, he did the impossible for me. From 2014 through today, he actually got worse, all right? And so, who's clapping back there? Somebody is, right? She knows it, right? You've been following him. Okay. He's gotten worse. And so, he's been in Congress now 22 long and arduous years, okay? During that time, he has voted for massive government spending. See, my good friend, you're from Georgia, right? I remember that, okay? He remembers. Massive government spending, bloated government. He's even voted for gun control. He just did that recently with the NDAA. Who knows what the NDAA... You're a gun guy, right? I see you in Mornitas all the time. You always have a gun with you. You know what the NDAA is, right? Okay, he voted for red flag laws on that, didn't he? Sure did, okay? For our nation's military. Remember, that's what he did. He also voted to have our women, our young daughters, if they want to volunteer, I'm okay, but he voted with the NDAA to have them mandatory register for the draft, oppose that. What else has he done? He's also, recently, he co-sponsored a bill in February. Now, see, he didn't think anybody was going to run against him, so he wasn't paying attention. You know what that bill was in February? Who knows what it was? He co-sponsored a bill to have transgendered people be a protected class. You know about that, right? Okay. This is supposed to be a Republican. Recently, who's been following that Dobbs case down in Mississippi? They just had it to the United States Supreme Court. State of Mississippi did something we should do in Idaho if we had any guts. They said no abortions after 15 weeks, right? It's up to the United States Supreme Court. 238 congressmen signed on to that. Even Senator Rich signed on. Senator Crapo signed on. Russ Fulcher signed on. Guess whose name is not on the amicus brief? You guessed it, Mike Simpson. Now, if that weren't bad enough, what else has he done recently? He has now joined with radical environmentalists to do what? Who knows? Breach the dams, the 4 dams on the lower Snake River. That's what he's done, right? Yeah, okay, so everybody know where these dams are. The lower Snake River, they're in eastern Washington. So, this is actually, so when I said he got worse, he has gotten much worse. He is, in fact, the way I describe it is he has declared war on Idaho's farmers and ranchers who grow the crops and they raise the livestock that do what? Feed the world. That's what they do. Now, Simpson's, his plan is it's totally absurd, right? In fact, he even knows it is. He said he doesn't know if it's going to work. His plan is to destroy, you can call it demolish, it's actually, the technical term is breaching, these dams that provide clean, emission-free hydroelectric power, right? Free. Oh, well, clean, emission-free. Breaching these dams also threatens to increase the utility rates for everyone because the Bonneville Power Administration gets its power from these dams. Guess where that power comes? Who lives in the city of Idaho Falls? You get some of your power from the BPA. All right? A lot of it? How much, do you know?
Probably 60%.
60%. He wants to breach the dams and replace it with battery power that hasn't been invented yet. I'm serious. It hasn't been invented. What he's claiming. Or replace it with nuclear power in a small modular reactor. When's the last time a nuclear plant was built in the United States?
We're finishing one now, two.
Okay, I know we're finishing them, but when's the last time one was completed?
40 years.
40 years ago, right? 40 years ago. So he's doing something we haven't done in 40 years. He wants to, and he wants to rely on battery technology that hasn't been invented. So, and he doesn't even know if his plan's going to work because he's trying to save the salmon. Now, if this is not the worst of it, okay? There's even worse news. And this is why I've gotten back in the race. Congressman Simpson joined with, is it okay if I call her Crazy Nancy Pelosi? Okay, Crazy Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. He joined them. He was one of 35 Republicans to join them and voted for the January 6th, I call it the witch hunt commission of President Trump, okay? And this was after Simpson in 2016 said that Trump was unfit for office. That's what he said. And so if I have to summarize, because he's joined with these radical environmentalists who prioritize fish over Idaho's farmers and families. So if I have to summarize his record since 2014, it's still, well, I didn't mention before, but there's amnesty for people who are here illegally. He's got massive spending, bloated government, gun control, transgendered protected class, been bad on abortion. He's joined with radical environmentalists, dam breaching, and investigating President Trump, okay? Frankly, that is quite an indictment on our congressman. And for that reason, he's got to go. Now, if that weren't bad enough, he's been in Washington for over 22 years, I think is what it is. During that time, he's earned millions of dollars in salaries and benefits and expenses. No wonder, Congressman Simpson, he opposes term limits, right? Didn't want that. So who am I? I am someone who always tells the truth. I always stand up for what I believe in. And I'm always prepared for a tough fight. Okay? So whether that's been in the legislature, whether that's been in the courtroom as a lawyer, or whether that's been on the political battlefield, I've never shied away from a tough fight. Let me give you some examples. Who here remembers when the state of Idaho, the liberals in this state expanded Obamacare and gave us Medicaid expansion? Who remembers that? Okay, remember that? Can you believe we did that? That's what we did. Well, I was the lawyer who led the fight to the Idaho Supreme Court. And we didn't win that, but we fought it. Who here remembers when the legislature passed grocery sales tax repeal? Anybody remember that? Do you guys remember what happened? You remember that, right?
Shoved in the drawer.
What's that?
Shoved in the drawer.
Well, it was shoved in the governor's drawer. And he was a Republican. It was Governor Butch Otter. Okay, he ran on it, said he would repeal it. We finally got the Democrats, the Republicans in the House and the Senate. We finally got grocery sales tax repeal. It's the worst tax in the world when they're taxing your food. What happens? Otter got that bill. He didn't veto it timely. He had 5 days to do it. He did it on the 6th day. I was the lawyer who led the fight to the Idaho Supreme Court. Supreme Court agreed with me it was untimely, and then guess what they did? Who golfs in here? Anybody golf? They gave him a mulligan. Right, Carolyn? You know what a mulligan is, right? Well, you know, you didn't do it right, but this one time we're going to tell you not to do it wrong again because we gave you some case law, and that case law misled you, so even though you didn't get it right. But I was the lawyer who led that. Currently, have you guys been following the redistricting in Idaho? Okay? Who was the lawyer who filed the first lawsuit challenging the election integrity on the redistricting map? Who did that? I did that. Okay? Because I'm telling you, the establishment is trying to stack the deck against conservatives on this map. I know it, they know it, everybody knows what's going on. But we're fighting that now. And I expect to win that. So what I'm telling you is that when I say I have not been afraid to take on tough fights, there's the proof. And frankly, with your help, I will also lead the fight to end Mike Simpson's days in office, okay? Unlike him, who's been in office for 22 years, he's been in politics for 40 probably or more. I've led my life in the private sector. And I have, where I've represented private clients, I've been their lawyer for 30 years, and I have built a business on winning. And I will tell you that what we need more now than ever in Congress is somebody who will win for conservatives, somebody who will win for conservative principles in Washington. You guys agree with that? Is that what we need? So let me tell you, I know what you want. What you want is you want a conservative voice in Washington. Who feels right now that there's anybody from Idaho speaking out for conservatives in Washington? Raise your hand if you think there is one. You all agree. You leave the room tonight, you agree on one thing. Now, I know what you want. You don't even expect one guy to go back to Washington and change everything. That's not going to happen. You know that. But what you want is you want somebody to speak out to be your voice in Washington. This kind of reminds me of a story about my son. I was his baseball coach. He was 8 or 9 years old. And it was really hard for me because his first season, he struck out 21 times in a row. Okay? His first season. 21 times. This was like 7 games. And to make it even worse for me, he never once, he didn't swing his bat. Swung out 21 times. So I told him, I said, look, you cannot win if you don't swing your bat. He was just afraid to swing it. So I said, okay. I told him what to do. So he gets up at the plate. He stands there like this. Got the bat up. The pitcher throws the ball. Shoo! Hits the mitt. He looks at me, and I go, he swung his bat. Next pitch. He looks at me. He swings his bat. Okay? I got him swinging his bat. He didn't want to do it. But by the next year, I was there when he hit a home run over the fence. What you want, I know what you want. You want somebody in Washington. He doesn't always have to hit a home run. You want somebody who will swing the bat, right? We don't have a guy. In fact, with Simpson, we've got a guy who's swinging the bat for the other team, right? That's what we've got. I know you don't want that. So what is it I would like to see us do? I would like to see us, the first thing we need to do is we need to restart building Trump's border wall. Everybody agree with that? Okay? We have to go back to a policy where people, if they come here illegally, they got to go home and request entry into our country legally instead of being let into our country by the tens of thousands illegally. We can't do that. That's not sustainable. What else do we need to do? I think we need a congressman who will stand up for what I call election integrity. We need to protect people's vote at the ballot box. Now let me be very clear about this. We don't need the federal government coming into a state telling us how to run our elections. We don't need that. So why would I make this an issue? Well, let's just suppose, let's do a hypothetical. Let's just say, for example, we have a national election for president. Okay? And let's suppose we have a state like, let's just pick one, Pennsylvania. And let's just suppose there's a whole bunch of cheating going on in Pennsylvania. What happens in Pennsylvania for that election affects us, right? If they're cheating, then it dilutes our votes from Idaho. Let me tell you about Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania does not require any photo ID to vote. Pennsylvania, like half of the states, also doesn't require any identification at all. You don't have to have a utility bill. You don't have to have a credit card. You can just walk in and impersonate Doug. Now, he will have already voted, so, but the point is that they don't have any voter ID requirement. Anybody can vote. I talked to a guy this last week that knows about these things, and he said that he went to a house to check this out. And the house was boarded up. Nobody was there, but there were 6 registered voters there in that house, and they'd all voted. So we need to make sure we have photo ID in our federal elections for president. Otherwise, we can end up with problems. Yeah.
I will say this with that, then we need to make sure that people can afford to get an ID. Because in some states, getting an ID is very expensive and they can't afford it.
Yeah, in some states, all you have to do to get an ID, you can do an ID with a utility bill, okay? But a photo ID, they need to get one. And I find that just about anybody can do that. What else we need to do? We need to support President Trump's pro-America agenda, all right? America needs to be first, not last, not next to last. We got to protect us. Now, there's many parts to that pro-America agenda, and I'm just going to go over one real quick. Back in high school, the civics lesson, you probably learned that we have 3 branches of government. The legislative branch that creates the laws, the executive branch that enforces them, executes them, and then the judicial branch that interprets the laws, right? You've all heard this. And they all serve as checks and balances on each other. And that's the way it works. That's the way it should work. Well, what's happened is this. Congress has gotten so big, or not Congress, but our country has gotten so out of control with all the programs. Congress cannot do it all. Even our state can't do it all. So what do? They delegate their duties to regulators. That's what they do. That's how we've come up with this regulatory body. And they've actually become a de facto 4th branch of government. That's what's happened. So what do I mean by that? What I mean is this. Let's just take, we can take any of them, but what they do is let's just take OSHA. Congress is now delegated to OSHA rulemaking power. What that means is when the regulators make a rule in OSHA, it has the effect of law, just like it was passed by Congress. They also are the ones that execute the law. OSHA will show up, and they're the ones that will look at you and say, you violated the law. Then they give you a ticket. And they say, look, you're being fined $2,500, but you can show up to an administrative judge, who's an OSHA judge, and we'll hear your case. So instead of having 3 separate branches of government, in the regulatory world, we have OSHA as an example. It creates the law, executes the law, determines whether you're guilty or not, makes you pay a fine, and then they say, well, listen, if you don't like that, you can appeal to the federal court, but guess what the law is in the federal court? Everything OSHA did just got what they call discretion. So you go in, you've got to show that maybe, not what they did was right or wrong, but you've got to show that they abused their discretion, which is nearly impossible to overturn. How many of these regulators in the country are voted into office? 0. They don't care if you're a Republican, they don't care if you're a Democrat, they just stay in office and they regulate. And they're like barnacles on a ship. You cannot get them off, right? You can't get rid of them, right? You can't, they're stuck. So, and you can't vote them in or out. So we need to change that. That's a big problem. And if people don't think that's a big problem, look how big it is. When Biden wanted to punish America, how did he do that? When he said, we want you to have a forced vaccine, he said, what we'll do is we'll just go to OSHA and we'll come up with a rule. Has the effect of law. What we'll say is that if you have 100 employees or more and you're not vaccinated, you're a health hazard. You're a safety hazard to us. Then we'll fine the employer $14,000 a day, and when he doesn't pay it, blah, 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 blah. So this is a big problem. Yes, sir.
So I would point out two things. One is that OSHA is an illegal branch of the government. It's not a constitutional form of government. It's not in the original Constitution. Therefore, I believe it's an illegal branch of the government, just like the Education Department.
Just like the Department of Education.
OSHA has not promulgated that law, which you must do. They just said go do. They did not put it out for review. They did not have comments and resolve those comments.
Yeah, so he gets it. So this regulatory, and it's not just OSHA, it goes over and over all kinds of rules and laws through these regulatory bodies. And so here's what I would tell you. Trump has come up with a pro-America at first agenda. I support that. Unlike Congressman Simpson, who did not support Trump in 2016, last year I was one of 32 delegates chosen to represent President Trump at the Republican National Convention. So there's a big difference between him and me. Now I'm going to tell you right now that Mike Simpson is not going to go down without a fight. He was here yesterday. Everybody know that? Okay, he was here. Oh, he was here yesterday trying to convince water irrigators that tearing out their dams was the greatest thing for them. I don't think that went well for him. He's not going to go down without a fight, because here's what I'm going to tell you. He and his Washington, D.C., can we call them swamp creature allies? Okay, that's what they are. They're going to come at me with everything they've got, okay? They're going to say terrible things about me. You won't even recognize me by the time they get to talking about me, all right? Because that's all they got. And it's absolutely true. I'm a lawyer. There have been books written on lawyer jokes, right? Lawyers have been the object of ridicule since the time of Shakespeare. So, and I'm a lawyer who does debt collection work for doctors and businesses. And so I'm a particularly easy target for them to talk about. But what they're going to do, they're going to defile and defame, and they're going to do all kinds of stuff about me. In fact, you know what they're going to do? They're going to even call me what? A damn debt collector. But at least I'm not a damn breacher, right? That's not what I am. You like that? Okay. So, he likes that. So, here's what I would tell you. My promise to you, as your congressman, my promise is that I will bring and give the same passion and energy I have given representing my clients. I will bring that same passion and energy to representing you while I'm in Congress. All right? So here's what I want to do. I want to open the floor up to questions. If anybody's got any questions, I told them I would switch microphones.
Yeah, what we'll try to do is I'll bring the mic around to whomever wants to ask the question. That way everybody can hear it. Okay. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Guy back there was first, I think, so.
My name is John Hollingsworth. My wife and I are new here to the state for about a year and a half or so. I have two questions for you. The first one is, what did you learn from the first time you tried to run against this same guy that you're going to bring to the table now to try to ensure that you win this time? And if you do win, how do you plan to it's easy to stand up to AOC and Pelosi and all of that garbage. How do you plan to stand up to the inept and idiotic leaders of the Republican Party?
Okay, well, those are good questions, okay? No, that's a good question. All right, so let's take the second question first, because that's fresh in my mind. If I don't remember the first one, you have to remind me. But I was asked this question actually today in an interview that got posted on Idaho Dispatch. And the answer is this. I just told you that when grocery sales tax repeal was passed, well, through the House and the Senate, I was the lawyer that led the fight on that. Who was the governor who vetoed that? Butch Otter, right? He was a Republican. He was also a big one supporting Medicaid expansion. Remember that? I fought that too. So what I'm here to tell you is that I don't care whether it's a Democrat or a Republican or an independent Bernie Sanders. Makes no difference to me. I have my principles and I have my beliefs, and I will champion those, and it doesn't matter who's in front of me. Makes no difference to me. Right is right, even if nobody's doing it. Wrong is wrong, even if everybody's doing it. So it doesn't really matter to me. When it comes to those kinds of things, I'm pretty much colorblind. So that answers your second question. Your first one was, what did I learn? What I learned is they will say anything. 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 If a guy... I had a very good friend of mine, a very honorable man, was a doctor in town. One of the most honorable men I've ever known. And he had to go through a Medicare audit. When they got done, Medicare said, you owe $26,000. And he knew he didn't owe the money. He then looked at his accountants and said, what's it going to cost me to fight this audit? $100,000. He goes, just pay him the 26, and then he stopped doing Medicare patients. If that guy were to run for Congress, they would find out about this and they would say, Dr. So-and-so guilty of government Medicare fraud. They would just lie through their teeth. What I learned is they will not talk about the issues. They will talk about me being a debt collector, me being a lawyer. They won't talk about anything other than that because they've got nothing else to say. They're not going to say, you know that Smith, we really hate his policy to rebuild that Trump wall. Or we don't think America ought to be free. They're not going to do any of that. It's going to be, and they'll take the tiniest piece of shred of evidence. They'll spin it up, blow it up. They'll make it so you don't even recognize it, and then they'll make a whole campaign out of it. That's exactly the way politics are played today. Is that right? That's what they're going to do, okay? I know that's what they did last time. Now, the other thing I learned through that process is if there's any question, we absolutely have to have term limits on congressmen, not state people, but congressmen. Does anybody disagree with that? Okay, you disagree with that. And I understand exactly what you probably think, okay? You probably think that there is term limits, and that's at the ballot box. Is that what you think?
Part of it. I
Okay.
believe the founding fathers talked about that, and I believe that they were against it. We, the people, should term limit people out. We should know the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the proper role of government well enough. Term limit. Why would you want to term limit somebody out that's doing a good job?
Okay, so he makes a good point, okay? His point is the founding fathers thought about term limits and they didn't do it. Why would you want to term limit somebody out who's doing a good job?
You may get somebody worse.
You might get somebody worse. And I understand that. But here's what I learned from running last time. What I learned is that what the founding fathers envisioned, we do not have. For example, the Constitution of the United States gives about 21 or 22 enumerated powers to the federal government, right? Yet today, the federal government can control how much water goes down your toilet and how much water comes out of your shower head. So today, in 1912, we amended the Constitution. We got the 16th Amendment. Everybody loved that one. That gives the government the power to tax income, right? So now what it is 6 of the 10 wealthiest counties in the United States are actually in Washington, D.C. It's a huge money pit. Take a look at Mike Simpson. He sits on an sub-appropriation committee. This last year, he appropriated $100,000 to the College of Eastern Idaho. Don't you think that board loves him? They love him. So do the teachers. So do anybody that gets paid from that college loves him. The sheep station up in Clark County got $4.2 million. The Indian tribe down in Pocatello got $7 point some million. The INL got a bunch of money. So our founding fathers, when they set the system up without having term limits, they didn't see the day when people in Washington, your congressmen, would be able to buy votes. And that's exactly what they're doing, okay? So now it's almost impossible to knock off an incumbent, but it gets even worse. Mike Simpson has offices in Boise, Twin Falls, Pocatello, and Idaho Falls, paid for by tax dollars. So he has the ability to run a campaign 24/7 all year long for 2 years. Why the incumbent can't do that? The founding fathers never saw that that would happen. What else didn't they see? Mike Simpson has a web page paid for by your tax dollars. He can gather emails, contact information. He's been in office for 22 years. He probably has a list of 22 million people on it, all paid for by taxpayer money. What else does he have? You just learned about this recently. He's got what's called franking privileges. You know what that is? Franking is a French word meaning free. So what he can do is he can send out mail from Congress over his signature. He doesn't have to pay for it. So when you add all those things up, a challenger like myself, and what I learned was it's very, very difficult to defeat one of these guys. And so although I understand what the founding fathers started with, that's not what we have today. And I do realize that there'll be some guys, good ones, that get to be put out to pasture maybe earlier than we want. But the truth is that Congress has a way of ruining people. If you don't believe that, I will prove it to you right now. Let's just assume Mike Simpson was running for the first time ever to be in Congress this year. Do you think, on any rational basis in this world, that Mike Simpson would come to his constituents and say, I got a great idea, vote for me? Well, what's your great idea, Mike? I want to breach 4 dams on the lower Snake River. And we're going to destroy the port of Lewiston. We're going to destroy clean, efficient, free hydroelectric power. And we're going to declare war on farmers and ranchers. He would never do that. Why does he do that? Because after 22 years in office, this sounds rational to him. And so what I'm saying is yeah, there would be some good to go out, but mostly what happens is when people are there that long, they deteriorate and they get bad. So that's what I learned from my last election. Okay, next question.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. My name is Eric Poland, first time being here. I'm a Texan now in Idaho. So,
how long have you been here?
We've been here almost 3 years now.
Okay.
So we love it here. Same rhinos, some up here as they are in Texas. So I also had just 2 quick questions. First is, when, not if, you get elected, who would you vote for as Speaker of the House, considering that, assuming everything is going to, elections go integrity, Republicans are going to just trash the Democrats. So that's my first question. The second one is interesting because it takes an act of Congress. Would you support a greater Idaho, as in Northern California has voted for, and some other areas wanting to join Idaho? So if we need to secede, we got a port.
Yeah. So I have no idea who's going to be running for that or who would possibly, I don't even know if those guys would be there. I mean, I like guys like Thomas Massey. He's a good one, right? As for the greater Idaho, I haven't really paid much attention to that. I'm pretty certain, I can't tell you that I know this because I haven't looked at it in depth. I think that there's a provision in the Constitution that prevents states from merging together. I'm not sure about that, but I think that there is. So even though it's a lot of great talk, people are desperate to get something done. I don't think that will ever work. I don't think we can do that. I think the Constitution prohibits that. Okay. Depending on how bad it gets, so I guess you could move to Canada, right? No, not go to Canada. Yeah, the land of free healthcare, right? Where they all come to Idaho. Okay. Another question. Oh, yes.
So I did not vote for Trump the first time, and the reason I didn't vote for him the first time was because he had such a sordid past. And now I've already received, at least 2 months ago, a survey comparing you to Simpson. and they said lots of nasty things about you, and I could figure out pretty fast who did the survey and everything.
Did they call you on the phone? Is that what it was?
Of course.
Yeah, okay. They did that a week after I announced.
Probably
Okay.
so, it's been about that long.
Right.
So my question is, how are you going to keep yourself honest and morally clean and not embarrass the state of Idaho, as so many other people have done when they get to DC?
Okay, so how am I going to keep myself morally honest and clean? Well, first of all, this is my lovely wife, Sharon. Okay? And she's going with me. All right. So that'll be my best defender from that. But you know, one of the ways you do that is you don't stay there forever. I'll be 60 years old. That's not a guy who wants to have be a career politician starting at 60. Now that's interesting. When we talked about term limits a second ago, let me want to mention this. If I remember right, don't you have to be 35 to be a congressman? I think isn't that what the number is? Well, when they came up with that number, most of those guys only lived till they were 50. So you could only be a congressman for 15 years. Maybe we ought to just, instead of having term limits, maybe we just ought to raise the age to 50 or 55, right? That way they would die before they were there for too long. Okay, another question?
So my name's Rick Herndon. The question I have is, how do you feel? So you get elected for 2 years, and when you go up there, you automatically get a retirement for life. Most of us in here don't have those kind of benefits, okay? We have our retirement that we paid into. They don't pay into theirs. They don't get health care for life. They get everything at the top. They exclude themselves from what we the people get and put themselves on a higher plane. And I, for one, am just sick of it, whether it's a Democrat, Republican, Independent. It makes no difference because they work for us, but they go up there and build their own retirement empire in wealth, okay? And it doesn't, I mean, Pelosi's worth hundreds of millions of dollars and she was a pauper when she got there, okay? I mean, she just got $400 million to a park in San Francisco for her that's in the Better Build Back plan. I mean, those kinds of things.
Yeah, the Presidio.
Yeah, the Presidio.
Right.
And those kind of things feel nasty to me, I guess is a word that comes to mind. So how would you
Okay, okay, Rick, it's Rick Herndon, right?
Right.
I can remember that because there's a lawyer in Pocatello I do work with. His name's Rick Herndon, and he's a doctor, okay? So when I told you earlier, I always tell the truth. So I hate to do this because I don't want to say you're not right, but they do not get health care for life, and they do not get a pension for life after one term.
Really?
In fact,
How many terms does it take?
they get the same pension as any other federal worker.
Oh, okay.
That's how it works. And I know this because I researched it, and I also talked to my good friend, who knows Raul Labrador. Okay, he's running for Attorney General. Yep, you like that, right? Yeah, okay. And so they don't. People think that they do, but they don't. But there was another part of your question I wanted to address. It was, what else did you ask me? There was another part of it. About getting special benefits, okay? So I was at an event in Pocatello, I think Jolene was there. I had this lady ask me the same question. She said, I said, well, like what special benefits do they get? And she says, well, they get Obamacare. They get special enhanced Obamacare benefits. I think they did for a while. I don't know if they do anymore. And she says, what are you going to do to make sure that Congress gets everything else that everybody else gets? And I said, no, you're seeing this all wrong. We got to make sure that nobody else gets it either, right? That's what we got to do. We got to say, look, it's not that the guys in Congress have got to get the same thing. Nobody should have to live under Obamacare. You guys agree with that? Yeah. Right, that's what we need to do. So, like I said earlier, I grew up in the private sector. I've always been in the private sector. And I don't think that congressional should get any special benefits at all that anybody else doesn't get. So that's how I feel about that.
I'm another immigrant from the West Coast, and been here about 3.5 years, kind of enjoy freedom. What's the worst thing they could say about you that's true?
The worst thing, I'll have to ask my wife, the worst thing they could say about me, okay, I'll tell you. My wife would tell you I cheat at cards. That's what she would say, I cheat at cards. That's what she'd say. And on occasion, you kind of have to, because they're cheating so bad, to make it even, you got to cheat with them. That's what you have to do. So, you know, I can tell you this. Go back to your question. When I ran last time, Simpson had guys going door to door in my neighborhood, asking my neighbors what they knew about me. Okay? Door to door. I have been dragged through the mud. I have been analyzed. I have been turned inside out. Anything that you would consider bad about me, everybody knows what that is. And what that amounts to is a whole bunch of fake news. That's what I would tell you. Okay? Another question. Here it comes from Tom. Or Doug, excuse me.
I have one. I'll come back and get. I have one. So, I know a little bit about it. You're actively involved in the Republican Party locally and all that.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I was second vice chair of the state Republican Party. I was region chair of the Republican Party. And I'm also currently vice chair of the Idaho Freedom Foundation.
Okay, so you've been involved in politics and a bit of a politician for quite a while.
No.
Okay.
I'm not a politician. Never been elected never been elected to public office, and I am not a politician.
Okay, well, you have, from your website,
Okay.
it says, Bryan isn't a career politician.
Yeah, there you
Okay.
found it.
He is a hard-nosed political outsider.
Correct.
How? To me, you're an outsider. If you're involved in the Republican Party as much as you are, that actually makes you an insider. And so to me, it doesn't really match the words. Because you're involved in the Republican Party, you've been heavily involved in. So to me, that just reading the words, how do you differentiate from being an insider that way and an outsider this way?
Oh, let me tell you. Okay. So several years ago, when I first became region chair, you know what they used to do? What was called the Lincoln Day events? They would have the governor and the senators and the congressmen, they'd all show up. And they used to even have an elevated table they'd sit on. Okay? People would pay to come listen to these guys speak. I became region chair and I said, no, we're going to change this. So let me tell you what I did. One is I got rid of the elevated table. Two, I had all the elected officials, I gave them seat assignments to sit out with the people. When Wasden had to sit with my friends from Custer County, he refused to come back to one of the events. Because who knows Dorothy Moon? It was Dorothy and Dar. They chewed him up. Okay? Now that's not what an insider Republican does. What else did we do? We got rid of the whole format to have people come listen to these politicians. Let me tell you who we got to come. Anybody know Judge Janine? Okay? She was our first speaker, right, Doyle? Yep. Who was it after that? Dinesh D'Souza. Then who was it after that? Anybody remember? David Barton. Now you talked about Tim Barton. I got David Barton. It took me 2 years to get him here. After David Barton, who remembers who it was? Candace Owens. Now do these sound like Republicans to you? Traditional Republicans? Or these Republicans you want to hear from? After we got Candace Owens, who did we get? Got him on here last summer, James O'Keefe, right? So what I tell you, yeah, if you want a seat at the table, it doesn't do us any good to complain and to whine or to whatever we do about the system. If you want a seat at the table and you want to be able to vote and you want to be able to make policy and you want to be a voice in Washington, what party do you need to belong to? The Republican Party. That's the way it is. And so the truth is that even you, Doug, I know, if you ran for office, you wouldn't run as a Democrat. You'd run as a Republican. Because and look, you read the Republican platform, it's awesome. Read the Republican platform. Now, Republicans don't follow it, but it's awesome. So I make no apologies for having been involved in the Republican Party. Everybody knows that I'm a conservative in the Republican Party. There are people in the Republican Party who don't like me, and there are a lot of them that do. So it's like anything else. I stand on principles and not necessarily on the people I associate with. Any follow-up on that?
From me?
Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I just need you to answer the
All right.
question.
That's what we do. Told you, we're here. Today's straight talk, right? Okay.
Hi, Bryan.
Hello, Carolyn.
Hi, Sharon.
By the way, Carolyn had a daughter, and my daughter was the same age, right?
I know.
Yeah, I've known you for a long time.
Yeah, she's a cutie. She's very funny, too. I remember she'd sit in the back seat, and we'd be laughing the whole time.
She's witty.
Okay. As a lot of you know, I am, Tom, my husband, and I started about 6 months ago, Idaho Parents for Educational Choice. What could you do, Bryan, from afar to help we're number 36, this state is number 36, and it might be lower, out of the 50 states in our education, and with 33 different metrics. What can we do? Number one, there's a really neat education savings account bill that's coming up. What can we do to get that passed? How do we get rid of critical race theory and all the social, what could you do from Washington? When you get to Washington, D.C., what will you be able to do?
What a good question. What we need to separate is what is a congressman's job and what is a governor's job or a state school superintendent. I think they have in the name for it, like superintendent of public instruction. So I'm running for congressman. That's what I want to be. I want to be your voice in Washington. Nowhere in the United States Constitution appears the word what? Education, right? President Reagan wanted to get rid of the Department of Education. Now, that doesn't mean I oppose schools, doesn't mean I oppose education, but I will tell you that as a congressman, the best thing I can do, if I could do it, if I could wave a wand and get it done in Washington, I would abolish the Department of Education, okay? We do not need, there is no reason that our kids should be educated from afar. Remember these bureaucrats I talked about, like barnacles on a ship? These people are in Washington, D.C. They have no idea who we are, what we are. It's one size fits all, cater to the lowest common denominator, and it's not a constitutional program at all. We do not need it. We can do it ourselves. We can save money. The studies have shown, they've done studies on these, right? That the students over the last 40 years are actually testing worse than when they started. Does this surprise anybody? No. So the best thing I can do as your congressman is to do whatever I could do to get rid of the Department of Education, all right? You like that. Now, these other things, what could we do to get rid of critical race theory, et cetera, et cetera? I will tell you, the best thing you can do is to vote in the right people to be state school superintendent and to vote in the right people to be your legislator. That's the best thing you can do. Find out who those are and get those people elected, because it really doesn't matter what we want. As long as we don't have a seat at the table, we're excluded, and it doesn't matter. So we got to get the right people in the right job. That's what we got to do. You do that, it will take care of itself, right? All right, other questions? Oh, we got one over here.
I don't have a question. I
Okay.
actually have an attestation as to your stand. I did go to several of the Bonneville County Republican meetings, and the one that stands out most in my mind is right after Simpson announced his intent to support the breaching of the 4 dams. The Bonneville County Republicans, and I believe it was the Madison County Republicans, both wrote a letter censuring Congressman Simpson for the behavior, and it was frowned upon by the Idaho Republican Party. So to me, that says that the Bonneville County and the Madison County Republican parties are taking stands that are making the rhinos unhappy.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, Bonneville County Central Committee, they've done things to us. Doyle's involved in that committee. We've refused to pay our quota. Remember that? What I'm telling you is that the Bonneville County, and there's a couple other counties, Kootenai County is the same way as some others, we're not your, some of the Republicans probably don't like us, all right? Where's over here? Was there somebody right behind you, though, while you were over there?
She's trying to direct me to people.
Oh, is that it? Okay,
That's what
she's
it
the
is.
traffic cop, okay?
Okay, there.
Hi, I'm Mary Annette Herndon.
Okay, from Georgia.
From Georgia, yes.
It's a good thing your husband's from Georgia.
Actually, he's not. He's from Florida.
Is he?
That's
He doesn't sound like he's from Florida.
Well, he was right over the line, so we were within about 60 miles of each other. Anyway, my question is, you made a comment about having not started up a nuclear power plant in the last 40 years.
Right.
Which is true. We've got 2 coming online, one in 22 and one
In Georgia.
23. In Georgia,
In
yes,
Georgia.
we do. My question is how do you feel about nuclear power? Are you for or against it? And will you support there's, every now and then there's a push to try to get nuclear power restarted in this country. And I'm wondering where you are, how do you feel about nuclear power, and how would you, or would you support trying to help get more plants built?
Okay, what a great question. So, that's one of the things they said about me last time I ran. They said, he's going to shut down nuclear power. I don't know where they got that from. So I went to law school in Sacramento, California. And in Sacramento, there's a nuclear power plant called the Rancho Seco Nuclear Power Plant. You know where that is, right?
I was there after they closed it.
We were there. Were you in Sacramento when they closed it?
I was there when they closed it.
Let me guess, it was been 1996 and 1986 and 1989. Right? I was there. My wife worked there. Okay? Stupidest thing in the world to decommission a nuke plant, because you still have to pay to run the whole thing. You got to have people there, bare bones skeleton crew, and et cetera, et cetera. Totally stupid, all right? There's only one thing dumber than that. It's breaching hydroelectric dams, okay? That's it. So I'm a big proponent of nuclear energy. We got to have a reliable base load source of energy. And the truth is, you ready for this? You know what? Are you a physicist or something? Okay. You know what thorium is, right?
Yes.
Okay. Where's the largest deposit of thorium in the United States? You're really getting high level questions there, right? Where's the in Idaho? It's in my district. It's in Lemhi County. They can't get to it. You know why? Because it's on federal land. The largest deposit of thorium, which could be used to fuel nuke plants, right? It's in Idaho. We are sitting on Fort Knox in this state. So I'm a big proponent of nuclear energy. It works 24/7. I'm not sure, you know my friend Kevin Weaver by any chance? Okay, so he's a physicist. He and I went to scout camp together, and we talked about this stuff during the week because it saved us from the boys. But, you know, I don't know what the numbers are. I think the wind blows like 17% of the time, and the sun shines like 30% of the time, where the numbers are. No, I'm fine with that. I mean, we need to do that. All right, I totally support that. Here's the problem that we have. The problem is, she said, would you restart? Because here's what happens. The nuclear power policy in this state, or in this country, is determined by who's the president, pretty much, right? So every 4 years, they have to come up with a new policy, okay? Well, you can't have that in nuclear power. You got to have a long-term vision. If you don't do that, you can't build a plant in 40 years. So, you know, if you have Trump, and then it's somebody else, and somebody else, and somebody else, you can't build a nuclear power program over a program that's changed every 4 years. That's a big problem. Am I right about that? Oh yeah, I think I am. That's what my buddy Kevin tells me. He says it's crazy. Every 4 years we get new directives from the president, and then you got to go shelve what you've been working on for 3 or 4 years. So it's crazy.
Is that constitutional that the president has that power?
Well, you know, according to who? According to the Supreme Court, maybe. You know. According to Rick Herndon, no. Okay?
I think a lot of it has to do with who he appoints as Secretary of Energy.
Could be.
Because that's going to be the driving force.
Right.
Because the Secretary of Energy is over nuclear, fossil energy, nuclear energy, blah, blah, windmill, blah, blah.
Right. Okay, more questions?
So,
Hello, Ashley.
Hi. Long time.
What's that?
We've known each other for a long time.
Known each other for a long time. Know your mother. Know your two brothers.
And my
Know
sister.
your sister.
Yep. Anyway, I've got a long list of questions, so if I don't have enough time for all of them, hit me on.
I'll let you ask as many, because there might be other people, but I'll stay here. It just depends what you want to do.
Ooh, my best one. Okay. Let's see. You were talking about abortion earlier. Would you be willing to make sure that miscarriage is not listed legally as an abortion? This would protect women who have miscarried or had a stillbirth. In some states, a miscarriage or a stillbirth counts as a legal abortion. And in that case, a woman who has a stillbirth or a miscarriage in those states where abortion is not allowed, they can go to jail. So what can we do to protect those women? Can we restructure the term abortion in a legal sense?
Rick wants to answer this question. I can tell.
Name the states. No general statement, but what states say if a woman has a miscarriage, she's going to jail? What state?
There was a case in Texas, but where he's planning on going to Washington.
So let me answer that question, okay? The federal government should not be involved in that at all, right?
Good.
So I'm not gonna get into identifying a crime. That's a state issue. The state should do that. The federal government should be out of it completely. So, and let the states figure out what they want to do, okay? People don't like what the state does, they can move to Idaho from Texas or from Georgia. Right, by the way, can I say this, something about you and you? I mean this. You guys are political refugees, I'm betting. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah.
You guys are going to help save this state. You are. Everywhere I go, I'm finding dozens and dozens and dozens of you who have come here from out of state. You're going to help us vote in conservatives in May. That's what's going to happen. Okay? Thank you for coming.
I'll just make a comment on that too, is some of the most avid supporters of Stand Up for Idaho are actually not from Idaho.
Right.
I mean, and it is amazing that they come from California, Washington, other states like this that absolutely don't want to see Idaho turn into those states. So thank you for
Doug, we've
doing
got
that.
one
Thank you for
over
bringing
here
it.
and right there, I can see.
He's here, I second that.
So we've heard a lot of people campaigning that talk just like you, or people already in office when the Democrats are in power, they talk just like you. But when Republicans have both houses of Congress, they cut a couple taxes, maybe slash regulation or two, and call it a win and go home. How can we know you're going to be any different?
So, you know, I get this question a lot. And the question is, yeah, we've heard this before, but how do we know you really mean it? What I can tell you is this. Here's what I figured out, and I also learned this running last time, and since that time. A lot of the people that come and tell you stuff, they tell you how conservative they are, then they go and they change. So that's how the question comes to me. How do we know you're not going to change? Is that kind of what you're saying a little bit?
Well, maybe change,
Yeah.
maybe they're just saying what they would say to the election.
Yeah, that's my point, okay? Take Simpson's he's the poster child for this. He was elected in 1998 with 40% of the vote. At the time, we had an open primary, which means Democrats could vote in the primary. Can't happen anymore. I think that a lot of these guys who say things to you and then they change, they didn't change at all. It's who they were all along. That's who they were. What I can tell you is that just take a look at my track record. This has done nothing. You know, running for Congress has cost me a lot of money, personal wealth. It's cost me a lot of grief in the press. I've been attacked by people that could buy me out 1,000,000 times over. I don't do that so I can go try to make a career or go make a name for myself. I do it because I believe this stuff. I believe people need to be free to make their own choices, that they have to be able to exercise their moral conscience, and that people don't realize that what our country is. I believe God's not done with America at all. And so for me, this is not a game. It's not a career. This is serious stuff for me. And if you look at what I've done since 2013, having run for Congress, the articles I've published, the fights I've taken to the Supreme Court, I think I have a proven track record that somebody who says one thing and does another is not that guy. I'm not that guy. So that's the best I can tell you. Any follow-up from that? You want to ask me a follow-up question?
No.
Okay.
I don't have a question. I wanted to make a comment on what you guys were saying earlier about the people that have moved here. Like I said earlier, my wife and I moved from Nevada about 1.5 years ago. And we joined this group. We started coming to this group for the very purpose of helping preserve what you guys have here. Because I saw what happened to Nevada. It used to be a red state. For anybody that doesn't know that, Nevada was a very red state for years and years and years. It's not anymore. And it doesn't take a lot of time for it to change over. And so we came here because we recognize, well, let me start by saying, I recognize that the people that have grown up here, that have been here their whole lives, I could see where you might think that things are getting bad, and maybe they are, but for people like us, this is like the promised land, right? and we found freedoms here that we didn't have in Vegas, and they don't have in California, and they don't have in New York. So I just wanted to say that you're 100% correct. That's why we joined this group, because we want to help make sure that it stays what it is, and maybe even goes back a little bit to where it was before.
Thank you. Appreciate the comment. Let me follow up and say something about that real quick.
Go ahead.
You may think that this is, and you're probably right, maybe better where you came from. I am telling you that there are forces in the state, IACI, you may know what that is, okay, and other forces. There are people who, I sit on the IFF board, there are Republicans who vote like Democrats, right? The only reason that they're Republican is so they can get elected. If we're not careful and we don't defeat these people, now I'm not talking about pushing them back, they have to be defeated. And I am running against the poster child Rhino Mike Simpson. Okay, he's one of them. If we do not defeat these people, it's going to be just like Nevada or these other states, right? And we know it, right? Idaho shouldn't have Common Core. Idaho shouldn't have, our governor says critical race theory isn't even being taught in schools. You guys believe that? No. We have to stand up. We have to make a difference. We have to defeat them. Otherwise, we're going to end up just like where you left. And so don't get complacent. You're not, because you're here tonight, right? All right, thank you.
My name's Donna Caruso. I agree with everything you're saying, and I agree with what the people want here. But it starts here, not up there. It starts here. And if you're not passing the word on to your neighbors, your friends, everything else, and pushing our freedom, it's not going to happen. If you go into Toffus Park, that subdivision, check out the signs in there. Strictly Democrats, and I mean they're pushers. Maybe 1 or 2 Trump supporters. But the bottom line is, if you're not talking to your friends, if you're not pushing to your acquaintances, none of this is going to happen. You going to Washington? God bless you. I had friends that went to Washington, and it's so corrupt there. They lasted 3 months and had to come back. It was one thing or another, their integrity, their honesty, the way they think, or their corruption, and they chose to come home. So God bless you if you win. I hope you can keep up with them.
Okay, well, I appreciate the vote of confidence. All right.
Okay, who's next over here?
I think it was right over here with the hat. No? Yes? Okay.
Okay.
I just had one more because this was one thing, when I got here, I loved how constitutional carry the state is, and it took throwing out a lot of rhinos in Texas to get that passed. I mean, it literally, the head of the House, as long as he was there, he refused until he decided to retire because he knew he couldn't get reelected. So, being that, we saw, well, personally, and Rick and I work together, so we say ATF is trash, unconstitutional, should be dissolved. FBI can handle it, don't know why, but what are your feelings on that Second Amendment? I mean, I'm positive that you support it, but you know, what is your feelings on the ATF? Because they were going to throw, thank goodness we didn't get that idiot in there.
Which idiot? There's a lot of them.
Chip.
Yeah. Oh, Chip.
Chip.
And better for worse, we don't like him in Texas at all because of his involvement in Waco. You know, not for
Chip
what
who?
size.
Who's Chip?
Chip, no.
David Chipman.
David Chipman. Yeah. Chip Roy's awesome. We love him. But yeah, David Chipman did not get appointed, but Biden tried to get him on there, and he is a gun-taking piece of trash.
Yeah, so
Sorry, I'm
was
gonna say
that guy, Beto, whatever his name is from Texas.
Oh, Beto.
Yeah.
We're glad he's running for governor because we know he can't win. But as far as that, you know, the ATF is also regulatory where they suddenly change how they had a certain feeling on something. They were like, well, you know, and that was one thing against Trump on that. It was like, okay, what was the definition? They suddenly changed the definition because it fit politically, and there's been a lot of fights on that. So I'm just curious what your thoughts on that are.
So, a couple things. One is, and I'll get to your question, but does anybody know how we got constitutional carry in the state? Anybody know? Who knows Ron Nate? If you know Ron Nate, raise your hand. I'm telling you, Ron Nate was the one that got that done. He got rid of a few rhinos, and Ron Nate got constitutional carry passed in the state. And right now, he's being challenged by the Supreme Queen Rhino down there in Madison County. If any of you can help him, donate to his campaign, go help him. He beat her last time, but they're after him again. But that's how we got it here. Remember when I said if you want to change things, you got to get the right people elected? That's what we got to do. So that's how we got it here. What I'd also tell you is this: when it comes to Second Amendment, I don't have it as one of my, we'll call it talking points, because Mike Simpson always gets the NRA endorsement. Mike Simpson, he voted for, he actually was at a meeting where he said, it's on video, that he wants to have background checks. He wants to have background checks at gun shows. He wants to have trigger locks. Then he did the ADA thing, or the National Defense Reauthorization Act with the military. But last time I ran, I was endorsed by Gun Owners of America. So that tells you, right? And I like them better than the NRA.
Amen.
In fact, I was at a meeting last time and I ran in 2014, and somebody stood up and they said, "What do you think about Mike Simpson? He was endorsed by the NRA." And I said, "Yes, he was." And you're from Nevada, right? What's the name of that senator down there in Nevada? Harry Reid. I said, yeah, so was Harry Reid. He was? Yeah. You could, if the NRA can endorse Harry Reid and Mike Simpson, I'm not sure I want their endorsement, but I got gun owners last time, and we're working on it now, okay? Yeah.
Yeah, I have one more question, and this is really kind of for the general audience. We all know that we need to get people in here to listen to people like you, okay? The question is, how do we do it? I mean, I've sent out a text today to about 12 people that have been in and out of the meetings to remind them that, hey, you know, you're going to be here tonight. We need to come in and listen to you. And we all need to listen to all of the people that are running. But how do we do this? What can we do that doesn't take a lot of time, that we can do? Like I say, I sent out a text, it took, 3 minutes to do it, to everybody, and said, come in tonight. But what else can we do to get people in here so that we can get the voters galvanized to at least come listen? I mean, I don't vote for you, but at least they'll be here and they'll be voting. We've got to do something to get that going. What else do we do?
Okay, there's a little good news with that. When I ran last time, there was no such group as this. There are groups like you in Pocatello, in Magic Valley, in Cassia County. And so you may look at it and say, I don't know if you consider this a lot of people or not. I can tell you when I ran in 2014, we never had a group like this. Okay, never. So you are making progress, but you want to make more progress.
Yeah, my comment on that is the thing that is amazing, and it goes back to who's the supporters. And a lot of the people that supported Stand Up for Idaho to start are not locals. They are people that have come from elsewhere. It's called apathy and complacency. And it is amazing how prevalent it is in this state and in this community. It is just simply amazing. So the thing you really have to do is, your texting is good, but in my mind, you have to go talk to them. And you have to tell people, hey, you really need to wake up. Things aren't as good as you think they are. Pay attention to what's going on. Wake up, look out, think for yourself and see what's happening, and come and help fix it. Because that's what it takes. We can text people all day long. I text them all day long, but you know what? A text goes, and then they can choose to answer it or not. So the thing is, and I just advise, ask people for things like this, for whatever, for the sake of our nation, for the sake of our state, everything, talk to people, bring them out, get them out here, drag them, invite to go get them and bring them with you. Take them, say, I'll buy you dinner and whatnot to come. Because the one thing that I found out is once people get here and start seeing what's going on, they go, oh my goodness, I never realized how things really were. And it's because we live in Idaho. And Idaho is a nice place to live. And people think that everything is okay, but it's not. So that's my 2 minutes.
Okay.
I got another question back here.
So the purpose of government is to secure our rights. And I see those under attack all the time. And one of the things I'm extremely concerned about is surveillance. I can't drive anywhere where there isn't a camera looking at my vehicle. All of our texts get monitored. What is your feeling on that? What can we do to get the gun? We used to have this thing called the Fourth Amendment, right? What do we do to put government back in its place peacefully? And also, I agree with you, we ought to abolish ATF. All those alcohol, tobacco, and firearms are all legal. We don't need those guys. But what would you do as a representative to secure and maybe get some of those rights back? Because we're under constant surveillance right now. And it's a clear and present threat to our freedom.
Okay, so you have to distinguish between these cameras that you see, private cameras, because people have a right to put up a private camera anywhere they want to, and cameras by the government. I don't know what cameras the government's got. I will tell you that. Where's that?
There's one in just every intersection in Idaho Falls.
Yeah, I was unaware of that.
3 on the way to the side.
So, yeah, so it gets a little bit complicated because under the Fourth Amendment, even the government can have a camera if it's in public view, but they can't because people lose their expectation of privacy when they're in the intersection. But what I would tell you is this, is the Patriot Act was something I wouldn't have supported. I don't like this whole FISA warrant thing, and I don't like these data centers that they've built, et cetera, et cetera. We need to be very careful of losing our civil liberties, especially under the Fourth Amendment. If the government had their way, they would look at everything, turn us inside out. I mean, like this ridiculous thing with the $600 thing with the bank that they were going to do. I'm very cognizant of the Fourth Amendment, and I agree with you. I just don't know the extent to which the government has or is involved. I believe it's happening. I know some of it that's happened. I know how the FISA warrant system works, but I don't know the full extent of what they do. But I do want to protect the Fourth Amendment.
I was just wondering if these meetings could be on YouTube.
If they're what?
Put this stuff on YouTube.
On Zoom.
These, yeah, we actually are putting them on YouTube. You know, we do record them and put them on YouTube. It takes us a little while to get them loaded up and all that, but we do get them on YouTube, so. And we have a YouTube channel, so. Okay, back here real quick, okay.
So I've got two. They're not really related, but first off, do you see any vacancies coming up? Let's say you get elected locally. Do you see any vacancies that we could start looking at people maybe in this room running for? And then also, as a displaced worker, do you recommend any legal teams that you know to fight the mandates?
So let me answer the second question first. I have been called over and over again by, were you at the site? Yeah, by folks like you. And we could never, I don't do labor law. I don't do that kind. I tried to make some referrals to some places, and the attorneys that do that, none of them were taking any of those cases. So I'm sorry, I tried. I couldn't find anybody. Your other question is, do I know vacancies? Until we get that redistricting map settled by the Supreme Court, oral arguments on January 14th, here's what's kind of crazy. I think they're going to set the map aside. They're going to send it back to the redistricting commission. It might take them 2 weeks to figure it out. Now we're into February 1st. If they do the same thing again, if it's an unconstitutional map, I'll challenge it again. We might not have a map until after the deadline for filing. The legislature might end up having to extend the primary. Hate to even say that, but that might be possible. So until we know what that redistricting map looks like, it's very difficult to say where there could be some open seats or not. It's all speculation. What's not speculation, though, is we need good people to run, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Thank you, Bryan. I wanted to know if you would give us your stance on the Convention of States.
Okay. So before I do this, let me ask how many people, is there anybody, and don't be bashful, if you don't know what the Convention of States is, raise your hand, okay? My daughter doesn't know, okay? Totally inadequate education system from her family, all right? And the Convention of States is Article 5 of the Constitution, gives us two ways that we can propose amendments to the Constitution. One is that Congress can vote their way into it, or if you get 2/3 of the states signing, agreeing to do it, then we can have what's called a constitutional convention. Sometimes it's called a con-con, all right? So that's what it is. And the idea would be that once you have a constitutional convention, then you can change the Constitution at this convention. And then you would have to take it out to the states and have them ratify any changes, all right? In fact, let me ask this question. How many people think that there should be a constitutional convention? Raise your hand.
Not a constitutional convention, convention of the states.
Oh, the Convention of the States, okay. All right, explain to me then what you think Convention of the States is.
Because the Convention of States, under Article 5, allows us to choose and put this through, just like you said. But the Constitutional Convention, sorry, where'd that come from? That's open for anything. The Convention of States wants to deal with possibly 3 items, and only that. And that's what they are doing, is they're boxing it in so that it can't go into a constitutional convention. It's hard for people to understand. There's 2 different aspects. Only under Article 5. I'm not an expert at this, but I've done some reading on it, and Mark Levin wrote a really good book about it. So I think it's a really great idea, because that's how we can get through the term limits, the balanced budget, and such like that.
And so, okay, in my mind, it's all under Article 5, right? So whether you call it a constitutional convention or whether you call it a convention of the states, the name doesn't matter. It's what happens at that meeting, okay? And I'm aware that Levin wrote this very nice book about that. So we'll call it an Article 5 convention. We call it that. We can all agree. Who thinks that we should have an Article 5 convention? Raise your hand. And who thinks we should not? Okay. So, Scale, I knew there'd be a diverse opinion on this, right? And frankly, I've studied this myself, and I've been on both sides of the issue. I was on one side early on, and now I feel very comfortable where I am. So here's what I would tell you is, we've only had one. I know what you were talking about. You could limit what would be discussed there, right? That would be the hope. That would be the hope. But here's what I'm here to tell you. We want what we want, right? We would love to have a limited federal government, as limited powers as possible. We'd like to change the Commerce Clause. We would like to have, all the stuff that we would want as conservatives. As badly as we want those things. So we would want to overturn Roe versus Wade, all the stuff. As badly as we want those things, the other side wants what they want. They want free health care. They want free education. They want a living wage. They want a pension. They want continuing education. They want all the stuff that they want. They want it, okay? They want it just as bad as we don't want to have it. Okay, everybody agree to that? So, at an Article 5 convention, that's what we'll call it, they would try anything they could do to get what they want. Right? Is that what they would do? Our side tends to be Christian. The other side tends to be agnostic, or they're atheist. And as a result, there are things that we won't do to win. I want to win, but there are certain things I won't do to win. There's certain things you won't do to win. But if you're an agnostic or a total non-believer, then you really don't have things that will restrain you. And then you become one of Hillary Clinton's friends, right? She used to have a lot of friends with Bill Clinton. A lot of them end up what? Dead. So what I'm here to tell you is that if we had a convention of the states, there are things that the other side would do that we wouldn't do. They would do whatever it takes. And consequently, you could never get a fair process, I think. So I've heard people say that there are ways to limit what would happen at an Article 5 convention. We've only had one other convention of states. That was with our founding fathers. They came together in Philadelphia. They were supposed to amend the Articles of Confederation. They were supposed to amend them. That was their job. They came up with a whole new government. And they said, well, our job was just to amend them. They said, we amended them out of existence. Right? That's what they did. The problem is that when the states get together in an Article 5 convention, they have the power to rewrite the rules. They have the power to change the whole form of government that we have. And so, how do I feel about that? One is I feel because the other side will do things that I won't do, you cannot get a fair process. They would extort. I believe they would. They would do whatever it takes to get what they want. Right? You don't see conservatives out rioting like Antifa. We don't do that. That's what they do. So I think the process would be unfair. So my feeling is that if we should only do a convention under Article 5 if all hope is lost. I don't think all hope's lost. It would be easier to reform our government today if people got activated than it was for our founding fathers to pick a fight with the world's largest army and navy and defeat them. This is easier, and this is hard, right? So I haven't gotten to the point where I think that we got to go push the nuclear button on that. It may come someday, but I'm not there. All right? Does that help answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, I'd actually like to make a comment on that, if I may. The one thing that I hear this a lot, in my view, there's really not a lot wrong with our Constitution. We're not following it. We're not upholding it. The things that we're doing are unconstitutional. So what makes us think that, you know, going and trying to fix it, blow it up like Bryan just said, and I agree 100% with Bryan on that. And, you know, there's an opportunity to blow the Constitution completely away. What we really need to do is fix it. Not fix the Constitution, fix the bureaucracy. Fix the BS that's going on right now, and that's what it takes. The Constitution is a good thing, and it's lasted and helped this country for, you know, a couple hundred years. Nothing wrong with the Constitution. A lot of people, and I'll throw a question at you right now, a lot of people say we need it for term limits, okay? It's going to be hard, even Bryan go on and say, I want term limits, and all that. It's going to be hard for one man to pass term limits in Washington. But I would ask you this, would you put term limits on yourself?
Yeah, I get that question. And look, it's going to happen anyway for me because I'm going to be 60 when I run, right? So, or when I get into office. So I don't really have to worry about that. But here's what I would tell you on that. I want term limits because it applies to everybody, right? Let's suppose we're on the verge of accomplishing great things. And this is what Helen Chenoweth did. Anybody know who Helen was? Great conservative. She term limited herself out. But what if like in the year I say, oh, I was going to leave this time, what if we're on the verge of greatness? Oh no, I got to go because I term limited myself out. If we can get it to apply to everybody, which I would be for, in favor of, I would do that. But I'm not going to term limit myself out because liberals don't have a tendency to do that because they don't have the same moral fiber that we do. So if we do that, then what ends up happening is the good ones leave because they got moral fiber and we're stuck with the Nancy Pelosi. So I would not do that voluntarily, but I do want term limits for all congressmen. Okay?
So I have a couple of things. The first of all is not actually a question. Google just told me that an Idaho ID card for someone 21 years and older for 4 years is $15, and for 8 years is $20. So I don't think that's a prohibitive cost to get an ID card. Plus you can't function in society without an ID card, so false argument just because I couldn't stand it. Okay, so you win, and everything, what do your perfect world, let me get to this, your perfect world in 10 years from now, you get a bunch of legislators that actually can accomplish something. What does that world, what does the United States look like in 10 years, your world?
What a great view. So let me see, so this is going to have, I'm going to have to do some math here, okay? 10 years, this is 2022 as I'm in office, so we're talking 2032. Well, what happens is that from 2022 to 2024, in the perfect world, we all work really hard and get Trump reelected. Okay? That's one thing that we do. Trump, when he gets reelected, he doesn't have to worry about running for office again, and he starts draining the swamp. And we say, okay, what programs don't we need? We don't need the Department of Education. The states care about water, clean water and clean air as much as the federal government, so we get rid of that agency. What's that one called? The EPA, right? There's probably all kinds of departments you can get rid of like that. If the Republicans take over, not the Republicans, but conservatives, real committed people take over the House, and we have 60 in the Senate so we can start passing stuff, right? You get the right guys in there, and we start cleaning house, we start eliminating stuff. We could also do some other things that some of you never even may have heard of. We could, as a Congress,
we can limit the jurisdiction of federal courts on certain issues. What are you talking about? Our Constitution allows for original jurisdiction to the United States Supreme Court. That's all it says, and there's only about 3 or 4 things they get to hear. All their other jurisdiction comes from appeals, and that's all set by Congress. So if we wanted to, as a Congress, we could outlaw abortion across the country and then take away jurisdiction from the federal courts to rule on it. Right? We could do that. That would be the same as doing what? Reversing Roe versus Wade. To a certain extent. So we could use that power to eliminate federal court's jurisdiction from hurting us. So for example, Mike Simpson has said, if we don't breach these dams, a federal judge under the Endangered Species Act is going to enter an injunction and tear them down for us. It's his bogeyman argument. And we better do that, because if we don't do that, then the judge is going to tear them down with an injunction, and then we're not going to get any money. Well, I got an idea for you, Mike. Why don't we just take the jurisdiction away from the federal courts to issue injunctive relief with respect to the 4 dams? We can do that. So I'd like to see some of that. I'd like to see, if we could, I'd like to see any way we could, and there are different mechanisms maybe for doing it, have the federal government have us go back to a time when there were like 21 or 22 things that they were supposed to do, right? The die was kind of cast in 1912. What happened in 1912? We got 3 things in 1912. We got the 17th Amendment, we got the Fed, and we got what? Federal income tax, right? Federal income tax. When those 3 things happened, it was only a matter of time when we're spending all the money that we are. And so, and by the way, on this Article 5 convention, that's what we'll call it, one of Levin's arguments is that whatever gets passed at a convention or Article 5 convention would have to be ratified by 2/3 of the states. And he says the states would not be stupid and ratify really bad proposals to the Constitution. That's what he says. Now, I like Levin, he's a smart guy, but he and I disagree on this. The states were the ones that ratified a federal income tax. If people would do that, they would ratify anything, okay? And so that's kind of, it's kind of hard for me to see out there that far, but that's what I'd like to see. And I think a lot of that could happen under Trump. So we could bring peace and security back to our Constitution. Now that's a lot. That's a very heavy lift to do all those things. But like I say, I don't think we're done yet. So that's about as far as I can look in the crystal ball, okay?
I heard the gentleman here say something about state identification card and how hard it is, and make it sound like it's impossible. Have any of you tried to do it?
It's easy.
It can be done. You don't need a state ID card. In fact, last year when I registered to vote, and some of you know my story, and I've explained it, it isn't easy and it's not convenient. But it's not convenient to tell the INL that I'm not going to get a vaccine because you're telling me to. It's not convenient. Right? Is it, Nick? It's not convenient. In fact, they look at you like you're insane. Steve Bradshaw was here 10 days ago, I believe it was, or something like that. And I was in the audience, and during question and answer, early in his presentation, he pulled out a federal document. It's an OMB 1505-0271 if you want the number. You can look it up tonight when you get home on your computer. That's 1505-0271. And what it is the counties in Idaho received money from the federal government through the COVID recovery package. They received check. Now he's in Bonner County, and they received the check. I think in July or August, something like that, $2 million. They didn't receive the terms of the agreement for 60 days.
Don't cash it.
Have you seen the monkey with his hand in the coconut? Okay, can't let go of it. And these damn officials, these public servants we call them, and I know, in fact, I just sent a FOIA request to Mayor Casper here in Idaho Falls. I sent it, what's today, Wednesday? I sent it yesterday morning. And I sent one to Governor Little based on that document. And I sent another one to the county commissioners here in Bonneville County, requesting that they provide to me the documentation that provides the terms of agreement for accepting money under federal grants, under the recovery bill. And I'll tell you, well, I'll just tell you briefly, but basically what they agreed to under the terms of agreement were that they would enforce all executive orders coming out of Washington, D.C. Now that includes mandated vaccinations, it includes masking of children in the schools, and you just go down the list. Now, it's not a question, but maybe here's the question, and don't raise your hand. How many of us are receiving federal money? It could be a Social Security check. It could be Medicaid, Medicare. It could be federal education money coming to our children in the schools. All of these grants that we're taking from the federal and state government have strings attached, all of them. Make no mistake. Now, you may have been enticed into that agreement by fraud, just like Idaho Falls City Council and Bonneville County and the state of Idaho. Now, if you're a liberal Democrat, you don't give a damn about your liberties. But if you're a conservative sitting in here in this room, I think you do. Think real hard about what you're asking for the government to give to you, because it does not come free. The first lesson I learned in Economics 101 when I went to Ricks College 50 years ago. I had to think that one out for a minute. The first thing that I heard was Tanstaffel. There ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And it's just as true for us individually as it is for the government. So when we're criticizing the government, look in the mirror. And what is it that we're asking? If we're wanting increases in benefits from the government, then there's new terms coming with those new benefits. And if you were enticed to, now, Mr. Smith here is a lawyer, and he'll tell you that if you're enticed into a contract by fraud, it's a voidable contract. Even if the legislation says it can't be voided, if it was entered into by fraud, it's a voidable contract because the government can't impair your right to contract. That's a constitutional protection. So that's me just giving a little spiel there, guys. What we're talking about here in this room, and I really support it, and Doug knows it, I really support good conservative candidates, and I support Mr. Smith here running for senator, representative.
Let's don't get ahead of ourselves here, okay?
So, you guys know me, you that know me, know how active I am in this political fight. And then I'm not critical of the political fight, but there's another side to this, and that's you learning what your rights are and understanding how to protect yourself from the fraud that's coming from government. If you don't know what your rights are, and every time you sign your name to something, you're compromising your rights. Is that true? Mike? I mean, Bryan, I apologize.
Okay, all right.
Bryan, when we sign our name to something, are we compromising something? Are we giving something away, or is it free? Does that signature mean something?
So when it comes to you got to always read the fine print. I agree with you that nothing is free, and you don't get anything for free. And usually when you're dealing with the government, you're always paying twice the price. So I'd have to look and see what the situation is, but definitely nothing is free.
When you sign your name on a government form, they don't need your signature if it's the law. If they need your signature, I guarantee you're entering into a contract.
Thanks, Dennis.
One of the biggest atrocities that I see happening today is the unconstitutional, no-win, trillion-dollar wars that we've been engaged in. We've never officially declared war since World War II. We go into countries unconstitutional under United Nations resolutions where the president takes us into war, where Congress looks the other way. We've wasted trillions of dollars in no-win, unconstitutional wars that we don't have any dog in the fight for this. If you're elected to Congress, what are you going to do to reassert the congressional authority that Congress and Congress only can take us into war and get us out of these wars that are draining the lifeblood out of the country? We spend millions of dollars in veterans care, and we have no national interest in that, in being overseas. We're light into the war. So what are you going to do to stop this insanity from continuing on?
Yeah, so there's the, I think it's the War Powers Act, which gives Congresses, they do this frequently, don't they? They delegate their authority to the president. I think the War Powers Act, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it gives the president the ability to move troops for hostilities for 90 days. Isn't that what it is, only 90 days? And the idea there was is we've got to, maybe sometimes we got to move quickly and Congress moves slowly. I don't know why it is that when a president moves troops into hostilities, it's not a war, right? Because we don't have a war. How he gets beyond the 90-day provision. Do you know how that works? I don't know how he can do that because the law says it's 90 days, right? That's all he can do. I agree with you that there needs to be a declaration of war. That discussion needs to be had, and you're right. We haven't had one since World War II. That was a pretty easy one, wasn't it? I totally oppose what happened in Afghanistan. We're not the world's police force. We can't have our guys everywhere policing the world. The next issue is people are now talking about putting troops in, Ukraine, right? For crying out loud, we can't even secure our own border on the south. We have no reason to be over in Ukraine. I agree with you that we've overstepped that. And I don't know exactly what I would do, but I agree with you that we should only move our troops into hostilities when we've had a declaration of war. I'm not even sure that the War Powers Act is a good idea. So I get why they did it, but I'm not convinced it was a great idea, because what's happened is presidents just move troops in and then they don't take them out and Congress doesn't do anything. So that's probably not a great answer to your question.
There was a bill brought for, just to follow up a comment question, there was a bill brought for Defend the Guard Act.
The what act?
There was a bill brought up in Idaho to Defend the Guard Act, and it was killed in a committee. It didn't even get out of somebody's drawer. But basically what that would do is not send any more Idahoans into any more unconstitutional, undeclared wars unless Congress declared war. So I would like to think if you're elected to Congress, you'd say, wait a minute, United Nations or Mr. President, that you're usurping authority that you do not have to take us into war.
No, I do have an answer for that. That bill was brought by a good friend of mine, Dan McKnight. Anybody know Dan in here? Dan did bring that, and he and I have talked about it. So is Ben Adams. He's a representative from Boise. What we have right now is a system where the federal government can call our guys up, right, and go put them in war, what they can do. It's really a totally bogus system because our guys only get paid when they're called up. So they have to sit, so what's happened is with our National Guard is those guys don't get paid, but they're at the beck and call of the federal government. I think I talked to Dan McKnight about it, and I've supported with him a law that he's working on so that the federal government can't call guys up unless there's a declaration of war. It's the same thing, but it's from the federal level, and he and I have already talked about that, and I do support that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
So I think that the word conservative is so overused right now, it just really bothers me when I hear it, and no offense to you, but we have people like the Speaker of the House that take people like Ron Nate and they call them the far right. And what is a conservative anymore? Because the people that we support the Constitution, and then we have the rhinos, and we came a couple weeks ago and listened to Janet McKeon speak, and she said we're one election away from being a purple state. And I believe that's a pretty accurate statement with the amount of people that I talk to. But naming names, if we had people like yourself, like Ron Nate, like Representative Hanks, others that are true conservatives that would say, this guy's got to go. And we all had that list. And it seems like everybody's afraid to say, that guy's got to go. Scott Becky is, in my opinion, needs to go. And so, but it seems like there's this reticence to name names and say, these are the people that we need to, and I appreciate the comment back there about, what seats are going to be open, everybody wants to fight, but where's the fight? And then who's the fight against? And there's so much misinformation. When you ran last time, you got thrown under the bus badly, in a lot of ways. And a lot of people look at that and say, oh yeah, he's an evil bad guy. I heard things about Janet McKeon, and it was nice to come and hear what she had to say and what you have to say directly, because there is so much misinformation. But it would be nice that I'll call them the far right. I'll take them. Give me the far right and name some names so that we know who the fight against. So that's my question to you.
Right now, okay, so if you want to know who the bad guys are, go look at the Idaho Freedom Foundation Freedom Index. That'll tell you. You can figure it out real quick. Right now, there's only one rhino I'm running against, Rhino Mike. That's what I'm running against.
And I know nobody looks at the newspapers anymore, but I just recently wrote a letter and I named names. And I said, Becky and William, and I always do that. I'm going to keep doing that. About once a month, I'm just put a letter in, keeping these guys down to what they're doing or not doing, not behalf.
Yeah.
It's just a letter to the editor, but it's something.
Let me just say this, because Andrew Breitbart, when he was alive, read him, follow him. Forget Breitbart.com, it's a completely different site. Andrew Breitbart talked about, do not let them define the terms of what a conservative is. Stand up, war, fight, speak out, use the media. We're older, I'm still 48, I know I consider myself older. Use those things and get your voice out. But do not let them define the terms, because that's what liberals do. What is tolerance? What is freedom? What is liberty? If we speak up enough, people will be heard. And Andrew Breitbart sadly died way too early. But if you get a chance, read him, listen to him. He never let people come after him when it came to a fight. If anybody remembers, Anthony Weiner took a shot at him. Anthony Weiner went down because Andrew Breitbart, because he picked the wrong fight at the wrong time. So that's what I just say. Just don't let them define the terms. Stand up for what's right. We know what a true conservative is.
Thank you.
So, I'm not sure if he's here still or not, but gentlemen spoke about surveillance and talked about the cameras on the street corners.
Right.
I will bring you back to 1975, Frank Church, who was a senator from the state of Idaho, and he was a liberal, he was a Democrat. Okay, he probably wouldn't get elected today as a Democrat, but he did back then. In 1975, he spoke against the surveillance system that was growing in this country as tyranny that would bring this country down if we did not pay attention. And today, we have surveillance. NSA, all of these other surveillance agencies are listening to everything that we say. Now, we can say that's a conspiracy theory or not, but it is the truth, and they are doing it, and they are using it against us. And if we don't have people that are elected to office that are willing to stand up and stop these people, because they're not Democrats, they're communists and socialists. They're not Democrats anymore. Most of them, you know, a Kennedy Democrat couldn't win today. He just couldn't, because of what we have allowed to happen to our nation. And we've got to have people that are willing to stand up for that and are putting that at your feet. If you get elected, or when you get elected, you've got to take that fight to these agencies. The FBI is an out of control government agency now. They're raiding people's homes. They're going, you can read all the things that they are doing, and it's not conspiracy theory. It is the God's honest truth. And we've got to put a stop to it, or what I fear most is that the people will put a stop to it for them. And it will split our country to pieces. We have one chance, and that's this next coming election cycle, that we must take back and stop it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, how about two more questions? Are we good? Oh, okay.
So what are your thoughts on like Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, a lot of these election integrity fraud? We're seeing indictments in Wisconsin. What do you think about that?
But have there been indictments in Wisconsin?
Yeah, the sheriff's. It was for a like nursing home fraud, ballot harvesting, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, so I can't tell you.
Stuff's happening.
I just didn't know. I know about that.
One more question for you. Waited till the end to let everybody else have a chance.
All right, go
Okay.
ahead, Ashley.
So here's a question for you. And this is serious. I know that you've worked with Bryan Zollinger. With both of you in office for the state of Idaho, representing people, and having worked together here in Idaho Falls, is there anything that you would consider to be a conflict of interest in you if you had to vote on something?
I don't know what you mean. Bryan Zollinger's not in office?
Isn't he a representative for this area?
No,
Not anymore?
he used to be.
Okay,
So,
good to know.
Yeah, so I don't see that as an issue. Okay.
But is there anything that you would consider a conflict of interest for you personally? If you had to vote on something, is there anything that you would have to recuse yourself from voting on?
I mean, that's a pretty open-ended question. I'd have to see what, I don't know what it is. I mean, I suppose if I was voting on a bill to have the government pay me $100 million, that would probably be a conflict of interest. But I mean, I don't know what that means. I don't know what you mean by that. I'm sorry.
That's a vague question.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. But I do know that Bryan Zollinger is not in office, that's for sure.
Well, that's good to know.
Do you want? This is the last one.
So, on that surveillance thing again, the reason I bring this up is I used to work for the government, and I used to have security clearance, and government looked into every bloody thing in my life, and they'll say to you that, well, you don't need to worry about it if you're not doing anything wrong, but I promise you, the government gets really upset about it if you start looking at their stuff. I promise you. I used to work in facilities that I can't talk about what happened in there. But they get real excited about it. And my question is, why is it that the government has a supposed right to look at my stuff to determine if I'm a threat, but I don't have right to look at their stuff. And this just seems
Well, I can answer that
a
question.
complete BS, right?
I can
And
answer
that my freedom, the people don't realize how dangerous this is. I think is the real problem, right? Is that they're building profiles on you, and if certain things happen, they can just shut you off. And so I think that there aren't enough people that are. It kind of concerned me that you weren't that aware of this, how much of this stuff is going on around us. But everywhere I go, I see cameras. I brought this up because there was a woman that her child became missing, and within 24 hours, they had surveillance video from a security camera in a grocery store of her buying alcohol with a little kid in it. It was on the national news. Within 24 hours, the government had been able to locate that security camera footage from a private camera and then spread all over the news, right? And so I don't think there are enough people who are aware of what the capabilities are and how easy it is to find you and shut you down if for some reason, and I would like to say I trust the government, right? But I see governments all over the world right now using the police force in very scary ways. So that's what my concern was. I guess I don't really have questions so much about that, except that I want officials that are going to go in there and say, this BS isn't going to happen in America. So I'm hoping that's you.
What I can tell you is I believe in the Fourth Amendment that the government should not search or seize your property, papers, or effects without a warrant issued upon probable cause. That's where I start. Now, what they're doing, I don't know all they're doing. I don't know. But that's where I start, and that's where I end.
Well, Bryan, I think that, it's a little bit after 8 now. It's almost 8:30. These do go quite a while, and Bryan, I think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Let's everybody give him a big hand.
Thank you.
It's not easy coming to these things, and I try to make it hard, and that's what we do. A lot of you that come to these things, we try to figure out what the questions are tough. We need to make sure that whoever we vote to represent us, that's the key, they represent us. And that we can trust them, that we know what they're talking about, that we believe that they're going to hold true, and all of that. And so that's why, we really appreciate you coming and putting up with some of the questions that were asked, and we appreciate your answers. But the big key, I think, that a lot of us can take away from this is our country's hurting right now. And it's just like Dave back there was talking about the surveillance and all of this. There's a lot of stuff going on that is not going on for the benefit of us or the benefit of the country. It's going on for the benefit of a few. And we need to pay attention, and we need to do whatever it takes to take our country back. And so with that, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Bryan.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do you have any last comments?
Hey, just one last comment. David, you want to stand up? This is David George. He is my campaign manager, and he's got if anybody wants to sign up to get emails from us or any kind of updates in the campaign, or if you want to help out, you can sign up with him. He's got a clipboard, okay? That's all I've got.
All right, Bryan,
All right,
thank you very much.
Thanks again.
Appreciate
Thank
it. All right, thank you, everybody. I don't know whether the roads are slick or not, but be safe going home. Thank you.